Your name, once spoken in whispers, is now a symbol of courage and dignity on everyone's lips. Your dignity has been elevated to a whole new level in the eyes of everyone who watched you during that shameful incident. Rumors, slander, defamation efforts, they all melted away in the face of your stance. Don't just be a spectator, be a part of the story. With your support, we will become a giant family of 5,000 people. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and join us, because you have been the representative of an unshakable character that did not lose its way even in that storm. At the moment when everyone was looking for a place to run, you stood firm and showed who you are. Have you ever watched a tree stand alone on a hill, roots planted deep while every wind howls around it? Seasons come and go, rain lashes, lightning flashes, and yet that tree holds its ground, leaves stripped bare, trunk battered, but still reaching skyward. It doesn't demand applause or call attention to itself. It simply stands, year after year, quietly defying the storm. That's the living picture you've become in the eyes of those around you. You've been that steadfast oak, not swayed by shifting opinions or the uproar of circumstances, but anchored by something eternal, something deep that most folks can only sense but never name. You didn't plan to become the center of attention. You never courted the crowd, never asked for a spotlight. But when turmoil swept through, and where so many would have buckled, you didn't flinch. You let the world do what it would, but you trusted God to show what needed to be seen. No loud protest, no self-justification, just quiet, immovable strength. And now, just as a tree draws eyes, when every other thing is flattened, people are turning toward you. Not out of habit, not out of idle curiosity, but because they can't help but notice. Something remarkable has taken place right in their midst. It's a truth as old as Scripture. When everyone else is losing their way, the one who keeps standing becomes a signpost for others. Behind closed doors, your name is on people's lips, not as a cautionary tale, but as a testimony. Some folks, who once dismissed you or whispered in doubt, now speak of you with an awe that borders on reverence. And those who doubted you? They're watching to learn what it takes to withstand the pressure and come out stronger. The world may not understand how you held your ground, but you know the answer. You weren't standing on your own. You were anchored by grace, steadied by a hope that goes deeper than the eye can see. There's a kind of faith that can't be learned from books, only forged in the furnace of hard seasons. That's the faith that kept you upright when the winds of adversity were at their worst. Every storm, every setback, every word spoken against you became another ring in your trunk. Evidence that you've weathered more than most, but still you rise. When others scattered, you stood rooted. And now, like that oak, you've become a place of shelter for others caught in their own storms. They gather near, not just for the shade you offer, but for the quiet confidence that radiates from a life surrendered to God's hand. This wasn't about proving a point or winning an argument. You didn't need to shout back at the voices that tried to tear you down. You let God do the talking for you. Let your patience, your endurance, and your refusal to break speak louder than any defense you could have offered. That's why, now, respect is blooming in places where only suspicion once grew. Admiration is taking root in hearts that were once cold or closed off to you. Don't just read the stories, experience them. Subscribe and step inside. It's a peculiar thing about God's chosen. You often go unnoticed until the storm comes. People don't always recognize the value of steady character, of deep faith, until the world shakes and they need somewhere to lean. Suddenly, your story becomes a light for others still trying to find their way through the dark. Without meaning to, you've become the living evidence that it's possible to endure without becoming bitter, to stand without becoming hard, to shine without shouting for attention. And now, as your life quietly unfolds, you're drawing a new kind of attention. It's not the attention that comes from drama or spectacle. It's the respectful gaze of those who realize you have something the world can't manufacture, an inner resource, a fountain that doesn't run dry when trouble hits. Your example is becoming a lesson. You're the living sermon that folks reference when they talk about perseverance and faith. You may not have seen it happening, but God was building your testimony all along. Every sleepless night, every silent prayer, every moment when you wanted to quit but kept going instead. That's what's being noticed now. The fruit is showing. You didn't need to fight for your reputation. You let your roots speak for themselves. And now, the fruit of that endurance is ripening for all to see. There's something sacred about how you moved through your trial. Instead of thrashing or lashing out, you allowed the storm to reveal what needed to come to light. That's the wisdom of someone who knows they don't have to win every battle. Just stay faithful in every season. The world's applause is fleeting, but the respect that grows from seeing someone endure with dignity lasts for generations. Behind the scenes, conversations are changing. People who used to question your strength now find themselves comforted by it. Folks who never understood your quiet ways now see the deep reservoir you draw from. And those who once stood at a distance are inching closer, hoping to learn from what you've gained. There's an old saying that the tallest trees weather the hardest storms. Your growth didn't happen by accident. God planted you where He knew you'd be needed, and the storms were never meant to destroy you. They were meant to showcase the roots He placed in you from the start. Now, after all the shaking, you find yourself standing taller, broader, and more visible than you ever intended to be. This isn't just about survival, it's about significance. You're not just another bystander in life's parade. You're a testimony that real faith isn't measured in good times, but in the days when everything's on the line and you still choose to trust. You don't have to advertise it. People feel it when they're near you. That's why they talk about you in rooms you've never entered, why even skeptics find themselves wanting to watch and learn. You may never hear every story of how your endurance impacted someone else, but heaven keeps a record. The quiet words you spoke, the kindness you offered, the prayers you whispered when no one was watching, all of it has borne fruit. God's hand has been evident not in loud victories, but in the peace that surrounded you when the world expected panic. So, let the onlookers gather. Let the curious come near. Don't be surprised when those who once dismissed you now ask for your wisdom. This is the reward for the ones who stay rooted when the winds howl and refuse to abandon their post when others would flee. You're not just surviving, you're showing the way. Keep standing. Keep trusting. Your story isn't just yours anymore. It's become the blueprint for others to follow, the lighthouse for souls still tossed at sea. And as you continue, know this: God delights in raising up the humble, in using the quiet lives to make the greatest difference. You are the proof that faith can stand any storm, and that real strength is found not in force, but in quiet resilience. The season that threatened to break you became the very place God made you unbreakable. That's why every eye is on you now. You're not just admired, you're trusted. Not just watched, but remembered. And in the years to come, your story will be the seed of hope for those who need to know it's possible to stand strong, even when the world falls apart. Sometimes life is like walking through a dense forest just before dawn, when the path ahead is hidden, and all you've got is that quiet trust that God didn't bring you this far to leave you lost. Each tree holds its secrets, each shadow its own mystery. But there's a stirring in the air, a certainty that light is coming, and everything that's been concealed is about to be revealed. That's the journey you've been on, chosen one. While others were busy plotting, whispering in the dark, and spinning their webs, you kept walking, step by step, trusting that a greater hand was guiding you, even when you couldn't see how the story would end. You might not have known who was truly for you, who was against you, or who was just watching to see if you'd make it through. But news, like sunlight, finds a way to break through even the thickest branches. It starts small, a single bird singing before dawn, a ray of hope slipping through the trees, and before you know it, the whole forest is alive with possibility. That's how word began to reach you. Out of nowhere, messages arrived from places you never expected. Sometimes it was a voice from your past, a person you hadn't heard from in years, suddenly opening their heart, sharing confessions that had been hidden under layers of old pain and secrecy. They told you things you needed to know, not to stir up old wounds, but so you could see how much you'd grown and just how far God had brought you. And then there were the silent supporters, the ones who watched you from a distance, prayed for you when you didn't even know you were in danger, and spoke up on your behalf when you couldn't defend yourself. These advocates, some of them strangers, others old friends in disguise, worked in quiet ways to shift the tide in your favor. You didn't see them working, but their actions became the stepping stones under your feet, guiding you across rivers you thought you'd have to cross alone. That's how God moves. He plants helpers in your path, warriors in the background, and angels in disguise, all ready to act when the moment is right. Then comes the revelation. It's as if a gentle wind sweeps through the forest, blowing away the fog, making everything clear at last. Secrets that had been buried for years come to the surface. The motives that once seemed hidden are brought into the light, plain for everyone to see. You learn that the tangled web designed to ensnare you was never as strong as it appeared. In fact, it was doomed to fall apart, because anything built on lies and fear cannot stand when truth begins to shine. The very net meant to trap you came unraveled right in the hands of those who wove it. If you love a good mystery, subscribe for the untold truths of Scripture. What's remarkable is how God uses even the hardest moments to set you up for something better. While others were busy scheming, you were learning. While they tried to block your path, you were getting stronger, learning patience, humility, and the wisdom to discern what is real from what is false. God was preparing you to rise above the confusion, to recognize that your story was never in the hands of your critics, but always in the hands of your Creator. When you receive a message from an old acquaintance who chooses honesty over pride, it's more than coincidence. It's a sign that grace is at work, untangling knots that seemed impossible to undo. Each confession is like a key, unlocking doors that were closed, letting the fresh air of healing and freedom blow through your life. Sometimes, it's not even the words themselves, but the courage it takes for someone to finally speak truth that brings you the closure you needed. That's how God clears away what's been hiding in the corners, so you can step forward without the weight of the past holding you down. And then there's the advocate you never knew you had, the one who vouched for your character when others questioned it, the one who saw your struggle and believed in your integrity even when you were too weary to defend yourself. Maybe they spoke up in a meeting, wrote a letter, or simply whispered a prayer on your behalf. However it happened, their faith in you became a lifeline, connecting you to new opportunities, new friendships, and new beginnings. God knows how to bring the right voices into your life at just the right time, and He delights in lifting you up through the loyalty and kindness of others. But perhaps the greatest gift is what's revealed in the final act, the unveiling of motives that you never suspected. Sometimes the hardest thing is not what people do, but why they do it. You spend sleepless nights trying to make sense of it, questioning yourself, wondering if you missed a sign or made a mistake. Then, like sunrise after a long night, the truth comes into view. You see the fear, the envy, the insecurity that drove others to plot against you. Not because you were weak, but because your light made their shadows stand out. The battle wasn't really about you. It was about what you represent. Hope, freedom, a future unbound by old patterns. The irony is almost poetic. The web they spun to trap you becomes the net in which their own plans unravel. While they were busy trying to close doors, God was opening windows. While they were setting traps, you were learning how to walk in wisdom. What was meant to be your downfall turned into your deliverance. And as the old saying goes, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. The proof is in your story. In the aftermath, as the dust settles and the sun rises, you're able to look back and see just how far you've come. What once felt like endless setbacks and betrayals now shines as the season when God showed Himself mighty on your behalf. He brought hidden things to light, turned enemies into footstools, and proved that His plans for you are always greater than the schemes of others. You realize that every whisper, every confession, every act of advocacy was part of a tapestry of grace being woven for your good. And don't miss this. It's not just about vindication. It's about elevation. God didn't just save you from trouble. He raised you up in the sight of those who doubted you. The same folks who questioned your worth are now coming to you for advice, wondering how you stayed so calm, how you kept your peace, how you managed to shine when everything seemed against you. You became a living testimony, not just of survival, but of triumph, a quiet miracle that cannot be denied. Your story, chosen one, isn't just about endurance. It's about the mysterious ways God moves, the unseen helpers He sends, the way He turns every plot on its head. You are proof that when you stay true, when you keep walking in integrity, when you trust in the One who sees all, nothing intended for your harm can succeed. The forest path that once felt lonely is now alive with possibility, and every message, every moment of truth is a reminder that you are never alone on this journey. So lift your head and walk forward with confidence. What was meant to bind you has become the very rope that pulls you higher. The stories being told about you now are not tales of defeat, but songs of redemption and resilience. And as you go, remember, the mysterious ways God works are always leading you to brighter mornings, wider roads, and a future filled with hope. Sometimes walking through life is a lot like tending a vineyard on a foggy morning. You know the fruit you've nurtured is sweet and wholesome. But as you walk the rows, you notice someone has tried to sneak in with bags of weeds, scattering them when no one was looking, hoping their mess will take root and choke out what's been growing. At first, it can feel overwhelming. Who brought all this confusion into your peaceful field? But let me tell you something, chosen one. God never lets a lie flourish where He has planted the truth. Just like the rising sun burns away the fog and reveals every vine, so does the light of integrity uncover every scheme set against you. When those attacks began, it wasn't because you'd done something wrong. In fact, sometimes trouble comes not as a penalty, but as a sign that you're carrying something precious. The world always notices when real fruit appears. That's when certain voices, unsettled by the sweetness you bring, try to stir up the dust. They show up with wild accusations, old stories twisted beyond recognition, and fresh rumors crafted to frighten others away from your harvest. They paint pictures of you that have nothing to do with the person you really are. Portraits drawn with the ink of insecurity and jealousy. But here's the miracle in it all. Truth has a weight that can't be denied, a pull that brings everything back to center. Like a cornerstone in the foundation, it stands, unmoved, no matter how many storms beat against it. People who know your character, who've walked beside you through all seasons, aren't fooled by the wild brushstrokes of your critics. Instead, they watch, quietly, patiently, with wisdom. They see the attempts to sow confusion, and instead of joining in, they become silent observers, gardeners who take note of what's being scattered and where. And this is important. They don't collect those false stories so they can throw them back as weapons. No, the people who love you aren't in the business of revenge. Instead, they gather evidence of the plot, carefully recording every fabrication, every half-truth, every whispered innuendo, not to shame, but to shine a light on what's really happening. They understand that in time, God brings everything hidden into the open, and the very lies meant to damage you become the seeds of truth that reveal who was really at work behind the scenes. I want you to picture it like this: a table set in the presence of your enemies, just like King David wrote about in the Psalms. The folks who tried to turn others against you now have to watch as your integrity becomes the feast. God prepares a banquet of honor where there was once only a menu of rumors. The very mouths that spoke against you find themselves speechless as the facts line up in your favor, and every effort to tear you down only highlights the grace with which you stand. People may have tried to poison your name, but what they didn't count on was the medicine of truth working behind the scenes. For every rumor, God sent a reminder of your true character into someone's heart. For every distortion, there was a memory of your kindness, your faithfulness, your willingness to help others without asking for anything in return. Slowly, steadily, the scales tipped. The community began to see not just the headlines written by your detractors, but the steady hand of a good gardener who kept tending the vineyard, weeds and all, trusting that the harvest would prove what words could not. Sometimes the best defense is simply to keep showing up, to keep doing what's right, day after day. The attacks may have seemed relentless for a while, but just as a vineyard outlasts a single season of storms, so too does a life rooted in truth survive a barrage of falsehoods. With every passing week, those who tried to control the narrative found their stories unraveling. Their wild tales couldn't withstand the gentle persistence of reality. The more they twisted your past, the more your present shone through, steady, unwavering, grounded in something deeper than public opinion. Behind the scenes, there's always a bigger plan at work. God sees every whispered plot, every backroom conversation, every attempt to manipulate how others see you. But He also sees the hearts that remain loyal, the friends who pray quietly, the family members who refuse to believe the worst. And those witnesses, they're not just watching for your sake, they're learning. They're discovering what real strength looks like in the face of betrayal, and they're storing up wisdom for when their own seasons of trial come. So don't be discouraged by the noise. Remember, every vineyard has its season of pruning. Sometimes branches must be cut back to make room for new growth. Sometimes weeds have to be pulled up to keep the fruit healthy. The very act of weeding out lies makes your character shine brighter, and your testimony becomes even sweeter to those who taste it. You're not just surviving an attack, you're being refined, pruned, and prepared for a new season of abundance. And here's the beautiful twist. As the dust settles, the same people who are meant to turn away from you begin to draw closer. They see how you've carried yourself, without rage, without retaliation, without the need to defend yourself at every turn. They see the quiet confidence of someone who knows where their value comes from. Your peace becomes a lighthouse for others still lost in their own storms. They remember your name, not for the accusations hurled against it, but for the steadfastness you demonstrated through it all. You don't have to set the record straight for every person who misunderstood. Your fruit will speak for itself. The vineyard you tended, your work, your kindness, your steadfastness, stands as testimony long after the rumors have faded. The folks who stood by you, the ones who collected the stories and held on to the truth, become your witnesses. And in due time, God sees to it that the real story is told. Remember, chosen one, storms may come, but the vineyard of your life is still standing, roots deep, branches stretching toward the sun. Every attack only proved what was already there, a life built on trust, truth, and an unshakable foundation of faith. And as you walk forward, the light that breaks through will reveal what God always knew about you. You were never defined by rumors, but by the fruit of a life well lived. Isolation was the next weapon in their arsenal. They aimed to scatter your supporters, trying to sow doubts among your friends and family. But what they didn't anticipate was how your real allies would talk to each other, connecting dots and realizing they were all hearing the same manipulated stories. Rather than standing alone, you found yourself surrounded by a stronger circle than ever. Their final act was supposed to corner you into a public display, hoping you would lose your composure and give them the spectacle they wanted. Instead, you stood in quiet confidence, unbothered by the accusations. No one saw you lash out. No one heard frantic denials. They witnessed a steady calm that made every accusation dissolve in the face of your unwavering self-control. Those phone calls, they were more than updates. They were testimonies. The first voice revealed recordings that exposed every lie and plot, evidence that couldn't be dismissed. The second came from someone with silent influence, a protector who had been laying the groundwork for your vindication without seeking recognition. The third message was a lightning bolt. The root of this campaign wasn't jealousy over achievements, but a deep-seated fear of the authenticity you embody. That truth had the power to reveal everything others had tried to hide. Every attempt to break you only made you stronger. While some schemed and plotted, your quiet resolve was creating an unbreakable foundation. Each time you chose peace over panic, you added a new layer to the fortress of trust others now see in you. Your adversaries expected retaliation, but you answered with dignity, leaving them confused and exposed as their own games fell apart. Unlock the doors of ancient faith, subscribe for new episodes every week. Spectators expected a meltdown, but what they got was a masterclass in composure. Your response turned the audience into chroniclers, recording not your defeat, but the undoing of those who set the trap. Every new observer became a quiet supporter, bearing witness to what strength looks like when it is rooted in character, not performance. What started as an attempt to diminish you has become the turning point for your greatest growth. The lesson is clear. No matter how elaborate the scheme, real power is rooted in authenticity. You didn't just survive, you set a new standard, proving that nothing is more formidable than a spirit anchored in truth. The world has seen it, and no plot, no matter how cunning, can dim that kind of light.